good sense. Why? Well, she was born in New York and she left New York. So anybody, I take my hat off to you. Congratulations, okay? But she moved down here when she was 2 years old. She's got dual degrees. She was a neonatal intensive care nurse and saw what was going on. The babies were being born into addiction. She turned around and realized that this had become a nationwide epidemic with its epicenter right here in Broward County. That's a sad thing for Broward County to have as their claim to fame, but that's what it is. In May of 2017, she was inducted into the 100 most outstanding women of Broward County. And I have heard this woman speak before, and it just absolutely floored me. So, without further ado, I will introduce Janet Colbert, and please come up and tell everybody what's going on in the world of opiate addiction. Okay, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to also thank Brother Don very much for being such an advocate of mine. And I see you use the French version of my name, Colbert, otherwise known as Janet Colbert.
Okay.
I worked, no, I don't mind at all. I worked at Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital right around the corner here as a neonatal intensive care nurse. And in 2009, all of a sudden our unit was full of drug-addicted babies, and we really did not know what was going on at the time. In the past, we might have had, once in a while, a drug-addicted baby. We had a little crib that rotated back and forth for them. But this, 20% of our unit, I would say, was full of drug-addicted babies. And as soon as one went out, 2 more would come in. So what happened, and some of you heard me speak at the Rotary, and I appreciate you being back to listen to me. And I do have new information as well, but I just want, by way of introduction, how I started STOPPNow. My friend at the same time, her son had overdosed, and the hospital called her down, and she went down and spoke to Blaine, and he told her all about the pill mills, how you could just walk in with an old MRI or just complain to the doctor that you had pain and walk out with pills. And in 2010, they did pass a law that changed that the doctors could no more dispense narcotics. Up until that point, rural communities, maybe people couldn't get to a pharmacy. Here we have a pharmacy on every corner. It really wasn't necessary. So they did stop that, and that did save some lives. And what our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has said, and it may still be on our website, I know it was at the time, that 98% of the top dispensing doctors in the United States were in Florida. 98%. And she says, though, now that number is 0. So I would be going to legislators and they'd say, oh, I thought the problem was over in Florida. No, it's not. Now they just have to write a prescription. Those same doctors are still here. And they were writing many, many prescriptions. A mother brought me one time a Macy's shopping bag full of receipts from pharmacies and so forth. The largest amount I ever saw was oxycodone 308, 30 milligrams. This is to a 27-year-old with nothing wrong with him. The 3 cocktails that they gave all day long to every single patient that walked into the pill mill was oxycodone, the opiate, Xanax, the anti-anxiety, and Soma, the muscle relaxer, given to every single patient in exorbitant amounts. So this was back then, and this has got us to where we are now because the legislators have not been passing bills to make any changes to this situation. I thought as soon as I let them know about these babies that are on our unit, they're usually there about 2-3 months. They're using all the disciplines, physical therapy, because they're like this. They've got very tight muscles. They can't even hold a bottle in their mouth. They're screaming. Their diaper area is very red. we give them morphine and clonidine every 3 hours to help them through the withdrawals. So I thought as soon as I let them know, they're going to do something about this. At the time, there was 7 deaths a day in Florida from this. Now there are 16 deaths a day in Florida from this. Last year, 2016, now we're 2018, so it's a year and a few days ago. Last year, there was 4,000 babies born in Florida addicted to drugs. NAS means neonatal abstinence syndrome. That's 1,000% increase over the last decade. So, we have legislation now that is been put in. Last session in March, I was in Tallahassee, and Representative Pigman, I was trying to get him to amend a bill to add the limited opiate prescribing. The way it is now, a lot of patients go home with whether it's an appendicitis attack or a sprained ankle, they go home with a 30-day supply of pills. And so that's why we have this proliferation of pills. This is a physician-prescribed epidemic. And whether it's in your medicine cabinet and someone goes in and gets it and shouldn't, what I'm trying to do is get less pills in the medicine cabinet. So Representative Pigman said to me last session, I'll amend the bill, let's do a 5-day limit, and I think we can get this passed. So I spoke at a committee hearing there. It did pass the House, and then on Good Friday, last March, Senator Jeff Clemens of West Palm Beach deleted that portion of the bill. So we did not get limited opiate prescribing in Florida. I'd say about 6 or 7 weeks ago, he resigned because he was caught sleeping with a lobbyist. Jack Latvella from Largo, Florida, a senator. He was going to run for governor. He too just recently resigned, and it was reported that to get lobbyists to vote, for a lobbyist to get him to vote the way they wanted, they were sleeping with him. So it's been David fighting Goliath, and David is not winning this fight. Someone spoke out there to me about the report that was on 60 Minutes. It's probably been about 2 months ago. I don't know if any of you saw it. There was a whistleblower from DEA, Joe Ranazisi, and they were trying, the DEA law enforcement is all we have on this. We do not have any legislators. So the DEA had gone into a pharmacy and was trying to shut them down, take their license away, and they had a case. I've heard them called many times, the doctors, drug dealers in white coats, but they're not taking their white coat away. But the DEA had a good, solid case against what was going on. They were even, I think they even had in this particular case where they knew the drugs were ending up in the black market even, they had proof of that. And what did they do? They fired Joe Ranazisi. And Marsha Blackburn, and this now I'm talking federally, she's a representative in Washington, and Marino, he's from Pennsylvania, I believe. I could be wrong on the state. But they passed a bill tying the hands of the DEA so that the DEA cannot do that. I went up to Washington, D.C. in 2014, and I went to Marsha Blackburn's office, and I gave her assistant the court documents from DEA versus Walgreens. And I had there the proof that a lot of these pharmacies went from under 100,000 a year prescriptions to almost 3 million. And I said, this is what we have flying off the shelves down here. Can you explain your bill to me and why you're passing this? And her response to me was that even if the pharmacy makes one mistake, they're taking their license away. And I said, well, right here, I have this, and I'd like to give this to you, to give to Marsha Blackburn, where a young man went into a pharmacy and they realized they did make a mistake, and they gave him too many pills. And they called his house, and the girlfriend said, he's a drug dealer. He's out there selling it right now. He said he hit pay dirt today, and you will not get those pills back. And they kept filling his prescriptions every month after that. So I said, that is not what is happening. So anyway, after that show on 60 Minutes, so I'm very glad all of this is in the news now. All of the corruption and greed has been up front in the news quite a bit lately, because Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, West Virginia has the highest amount of deaths in all of the United States. He and Claire Pascal are now trying to pass a bill that would rescind that and give the DEA back their power that they need to do something about this situation we have. But on the Florida level, on the state level, there has been, Governor Scott, I don't know if anyone saw this, he did declare Florida to be a state of emergency. And there is a bill, it's Senate Bill 8 or House Bill 21, both of them, limited opiate prescribing, a 3-day supply. This will not do anything to chronic pain patients that need their pain meds. It will not do anything to cancer patients, end-of-life stage patients that need their meds. This is just an acute setting that if somebody goes to the ER with an injury, they're not going to go home with a 30-day supply of pills and keep it in the medicine cabinet and it ends up out on the street. So I hope it can pass that, and I would implore all of you to go to my website. I've given each of you a bookmark, and my website is on there, STOPPNow.com. And under current projects, I have the 2 House committees that are hearing this bill tomorrow. I called all the senators today, and I was told by one of the legal assistants that the bill is having the hearing tomorrow, but they are delaying the vote. So if you can't call tomorrow, don't give up. Keep calling. They need to know that we all want them to vote yes to Senate Bill 8 and House Bill 21. So I'd appreciate that if you could do that. We need, and I don't mean to leave this part out, Big Pharma is up there lobbying, and I know they're not lobbying for this bill. They are voting against, they're lobbying against it. So I welcome any questions any of you have for me. The foster care system has no more beds for babies. I think it was in the first half of 2017, 60% of all removals from the home were due to substance abuse. There's no more beds even to keep these babies. The medical examiners are completely overwhelmed. So we really need, the one part of the bill is for the limited opiate prescribing. The other is for a doctor's education, and also to mandate that the prescribers must use the PDMP. The PDMP is a database. It was put into effect in 2011, but it was not mandatory that the doctors use it, and it's a very low percentage of doctors that do use it. One of the things is it wasn't that user-friendly. They are making it more user-friendly for the doctors. They're putting the records in the electronic health records of the patient, so it would be easier for them to get on there and get the information they need. And once they are used to using the tool, I think that they will find it to be a very useful tool, that they can go on the database and see if this patient is on any opiates, because what they were prescribing in those pill mills with the Xanax and the opiate combination, they're both CNS depressants. So it was very easy for a patient to die of respiratory depression. So it's important that a doctor knows what their patient is on. And if they see that a patient is on Xanax and there was an injury, they'll give them anti-inflammatory, something like that, rather than an opiate to just make their chances greater of becoming another statistic. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, when are you going to plug your book? She's so passionate about this.
I did write a book, and then it tells all about the opiate epidemic. It did start in Broward County. Broward County, Florida is the epicenter for the entire nation. When I started back in 2010, there was 150 pill mills just in Broward County, Florida. That's more than Starbucks, more than McDonald's, and they're not as blatant as they used to be, but they are still here. The most recent medical examiner's report shows that 28% increase in the deaths from oxycodone. Now, I know you've heard about heroin and fentanyl, and that has just contributed to this more, but 8 out of 10 heroin users start with this not-so-innocent pain pill, and that is still being prescribed. There was 28% increase in both the amount of being prescribed and the amount of deaths from oxycodone. There used to be a taxi cab that would run all through town with the banner on top. Office visits, $250, Roxy's $3. They were so blatant about what they were doing, and they're not there anymore because when we first started also out there holding protest in front of the pill mills, there was no consequences at all. The doctors weren't being arrested, and the clinic owners weren't being arrested. Many of the clinic owners had previous convictions and prison term for cocaine and that kind of thing, and they advertised on Craigslist, and they got doctors to come in, and all they had to do is write their name to a prescription pad all day long and get $500,000. So that's what they were making. Clinic owners are making much more than that. When they arrested Vincent Colangelo up there on Commercial Boulevard, he was making $150,000 a day. How much money do you need? So there's also a court case in the back of the book for a doctor that was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. I think you'll find that very interesting as well. Any questions?
I have a question, you sort of answered it there. I can understand the drug companies, how they make the money because they manufacture and sell it, the pharmacies because they're distributing it. I wasn't sure how the doctors tie in. Why would they, unless you're a quote-unquote crooked doctor who's just working in a pill mill and signing your name to make money and make that kind of money, why would why would a doctor have an incentive to write these?
They were paying them $500,000 a year to do this, and some of them, a lot of them were retired, elderly doctors, and they just couldn't pass it up because there was no consequence. And they can always rationalize their action that, well, they died because they were a drug addict, But the thing is, many of them were not drug addicts until this pill took a hold of them, and we should be able to do something about this.
I think there was also the manufacturer of Oxycontin had salesmen out there convincing doctors when it first came out that it was not addictive, and this is the answer to your prayers for pain relief, and it's not addictive. And then when it became more and more addictive, they had all kinds of excuses. Well, you're giving it too frequently, but they had to give it more frequently in order to get the pain-killing effect that the patient really needed. And these folks have made billions of dollars off that. I've heard there was some thought that some people are going to sue the manufacturers, but a lot of that are just doctors being given false information by drug reps.
That's absolutely true.
For years, and to me, that's the real crime. The question I have, there was an article last week or so in the paper about why does the United States have such an addiction problem when UK and other countries don't? And their answer was that a doctor in the U.S. sees a patient with pain. It's easier to write a prescription and they get paid for it than to put them on a course of physical therapy, especially things like lower back pain that can be unremitting. Instead of physical therapy or helping pay for the physical therapy, it's easy to write the prescription because they can do it, and the physical therapy is not available in the U.S. and where it is in other countries. So that's a governmental problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The VA, I read recently because they had a big problem too. I'm sure you heard of that, of all the veterans that were dying from drug overdose or committing suicide from drug overdose. And we were just speaking when we were up here, Ed and I, that the United States, to quote what you're basically talking about, is 5% of the world's population, but 87% of the oxycodone is consumed. So something is wrong there, something's out of balance there.
Is there any good research or hope for research to deal with this as a medical problem with drugs or treatment or other directions?
Other alternatives. I was reading something fairly recently that another thing that happened was they not only said that this is the answer to all your prayers because, you know, you cannot become addicted. The doctors were getting all their information about this drug from the drug company, so that right there was a problem. But they also took all their other tools away. Physical therapy is not covered by insurance. Going to a chiropractor, all the other methods of helping this person that just has presented to you in pain has been taken away, only the pills, and that's part of the problem, so we need to do something about that. The CDC guidelines, they came out with guidelines in 2016, which I do have in my appendix back here, the 12 of the CDC guidelines of what they recommend, and the doctors would be far better off following what the CDC is saying than listening to the drug companies. But they did say you cannot become addicted if you're really in pain, and it's highly addictive drug is the problem. It is heroin. It's got the same chemical component as heroin. And like I was talking to this young man earlier, if someone went to the ER with a sprained ankle or something and they said, I can give you some heroin for that, everyone would back off. But that is what's happening. There are some dentists that won't prescribe it at all after, and they said you are much better off because you've got an inflamed area after a tooth extraction, wisdom teeth, etc. So you're much better off with an anti-inflammatory than an opiate, and so many of them are not prescribing this. I was also, I came across this in many of my meetings that I go to through United Way. I'm in a couple of advocacy groups, an epidemiologist from Nova Southeastern, Jim Hall. I don't know if any of you know him. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. And in Broward High Schools, they did a survey, Broward High Schools, and then compared with the USA. This is high school students. And they asked them, and as far as heroin, methamphetamine, those kinds of things, they're fairly low, very low, 3.64 for Broward, and for the nation, 3.53. But for ever used a prescription without an MD, the answer to that in Broward County is 13.5 and 16.8 throughout the United States, almost 17%. And that's a Xanax or a Valium or a Percocet or an Oxycodone, because it seems so innocent. They got it out of their own mother's medicine cabinet or their uncle's. So, you know, this is the problem. They don't think that it can harm them, and once they take it, that's it, really. When I was up in one of the senator's office in Washington, D.C., the girl that I was speaking with said when they were all in college, there was a whole group of them that came from this one town. And one of them was a football player, and he was like the real hero and the great one of the group. And he had an injury and went on pills. And they never knew anything was wrong until they heard that he told his parents his car was stolen, so they would send money. And she said, and now when we go back home for a wedding or something, she was fairly young, I'd say mid-20s, he's living with his parents. He's been in and out of rehab centers, and they all have good jobs. And that's unfortunately what happens to so many. And they don't all start out on the joyride. They sometimes become addicted, honestly. So.